everybody, I'm Sabrina Salas-Matanani with your latest on containing COVID. According to the latest information from the Joint Information Center released just before 10 o'clock on Friday night, the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 on Guam stands at 141 with 5 deaths and 128 recoveries. The Department of Public Health's community testing pilot project wrapped up at 12 o'clock noon on Saturday at the Estumbo Gym. Members of the Guam National Guard helped control traffic and pedestrian flow. According to the Joint Information Center, 52 people were tested, 10 were walk-ins, and 42 came in through the drive-thru. Over the past couple of days, public health nurses canvassed the nearby Sagan-Linazan and Lower Estumbo areas to pre-screen residents and gave them a pass to get tested. Residents with mild COVID symptoms were urged to get tested. Public Health was aiming for a sample size of 100 residents. The pivot toward expanded testing is the next phase in the government's efforts to determine how widespread COVID is in the community. The results will be factored into the decisions that will be made to gradually reopen the island. Now that the government has increased its testing capabilities, residents who are experiencing COVID symptoms are urged to contact their physicians and get tested immediately. If you do not have a private physician, you are urged to contact any of Public Health's community health centers. The remaining economic impact payments that the government of Guam is advancing will be mailed out, according to the Department of Revenue and Taxation. About 3,800 checks were transmitted to the Treasurer of Guam. A total of 7,005 checks were printed for a cumulative total of nearly $11 million. These checks are for those individuals who filed and had income of less than $10,000. Checks were distributed in batches to allow for Guam's financial institutions to remain compliant with social distancing protocols. The remaining EIP checks are still pending approval of DRT's implementation plan by the IRS. President Donald Trump signed a new law that replenishes the Paycheck Protection Program with $320 billion in additional funding. Before the PPP ran out of funding, 508 local businesses received about $102 million in loans as part of the initial program, while several local companies were left out because it ran out of money. Guam SBA advises local companies to continue to meet with their bankers and make sure their paperwork is complete because, again, it will be on a first-come, first-served basis. As for the latest on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, 100% of the crew had been tested. 856 sailors testing positive with a little over 4,000 negative, and a small number of results are still pending. Of the total cases, 112 have recovered, with over 4,200 sailors moved ashore. 4 sailors are at Naval Hospital, with none in the ICU. It was announced earlier this week that sailors who are in quarantine hotels in Tumon will stay in quarantine for an additional week. The Navy confirming that more than 40 sailors who first tested negative have since tested positive. Chief Pentagon spokesperson Jonathan Hoffman.
That ship could pull up anchor and go to war right now if we needed it to. The timeline has shifted. As we've seen some additional symptomatic patients show up, or asymptomatic patients show up as positive. But that's out of caution. I mean, this is a learning environment. This is not something we've had to deal with. I think the hope from the Navy's perspective and from the Department's perspective is we would rather take a little bit more time on the front end to get to a place where we have more confidence that the crew is safe and that the virus is no longer on the ship than be in a position a month from now where we're dealing with a second wave. And so they're taking their time. They're relying on the doctors. They're relying on the testing. We've ramped up our ability to do testing in Guam so that we can get a larger number of tests done each day and rapidly. And we've seen that. We've gone through the entire crew has been tested, and we'll start to see additional people tested as we put people back on the ship.
Meanwhile, national media report that the recommendation to give TR Captain Bret Crozier back his ship was made by the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Michael Gilday, who had ordered an investigation into his ousting. His recommendation to reinstate Crozier in effect exonerates the captain for blasting out an email warning sailors would die if the Navy did not act faster to get them off the infected ship. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has not yet decided whether to accept the recommendation. Crozier remains in isolation here on Guam and must test negative for the virus before he can rejoin his ship. For the very latest on containing COVID, make sure to check out all of KUAM's social media platforms. Again, everybody, we are all in this together. Stay home, mask up, and practice social distancing. Reporting for Guam's News Network, I'm Sabrina Salas, Matanani.